So what I'm going to talk about today is my book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Now, this book applies whether you're in a church or a school or a corporation or a department within that corporation, any kind of a setting where you're working as a team. Okay? And I've been very blessed that companies and sports teams and churches and hospitals have all been using this. So we're going to talk about teams. Okay? And my books are fiction. Most of my books are. But today I'm not going to tell you fiction stories that you'll find in my book. I'm going to tell you real stories. And so we're just going to go through this. I don't have a ton of time, and I have a lot of good material to cover, so we're going to try to go fast. I think it's good. I hope it's good. Okay, so let's talk about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. The first dysfunction of a team is the absence of trust. So I just told you that this stuff is simple. You're hearing this. If you're hearing it for the first time, you're thinking, no duh. Did this guy just say, if you want to build a team, you have to trust each other? Yeah, it's so obvious, isn't it? And I realize that, and it is. But there's something about trust. Most people think about trust in a different way than I'm talking about it. See, most people think of trust as predictive trust, which means you and I have known each other long enough now to where if I say something, you'll be able to predict my behavior. Or if we're in a meeting or in a team and you do something, I know what I can expect from you because we can predict one another's behavior. That's predictive trust. And any group of people that's known each other for a long period of time can have predictive trust, but that's not the kind of trust that makes a team great. The kind of trust that makes a team great is what I call vulnerability-based trust. Vulnerability-based trust. That's the kind of trust that comes about when human beings on a team can and will genuinely say things to one another like, I don't know the answer, I need help, I think I really messed this up, you are much smarter than I am, can you teach me how to be like you, or I'm sorry, what I said yesterday was totally out of line, and I apologize. When human beings can be that emotionally buck naked, if you will, with each other, not pretending to be something they're not, when they can be that vulnerable, it changes the dynamics on a team completely. It is one of the most powerful things you can do on a team because people come and they're open and they're honest and it changes everything. And one of the best ways we can understand this is to think about times we've been on teams that didn't have that. Let me tell you a story about one of those teams. I once worked with a startup company in the San Francisco Bay Area where I live. And it was a startup technology company, but it wasn't your typical garage startup. It was a startup on steroids, if you will. I mean, they had a ton of money in the bank right out of the gate. They had a great product. They had handpicked all these world-class executives from around the country, from SAP and Oracle and PeopleSoft, all these great companies. And they had everything going for them. And everyone said that this company was going to change the world, IPO, make a ton of money, and everybody had high expectations for them. Well, after they had been in business for a while, they called my little firm to do some work with their executive team. And God bless you. And so, oh, look, a bird, you know. And so we went to work to observe, before we started and did a 2-day offsite with this team, we went and observed one of their staff meetings just to kind of get a read on the team. And we learned 2 very interesting things about this team. First of all, they weren't doing very well in the market compared to some of their competitors. And it was very puzzling because they had so much promise. The second thing we noticed was that there was this one member of the team, it happened to be a woman, it doesn't matter, she was in charge of marketing. And whenever she spoke during the meeting, something strange would happen. She'd express her opinion, and everyone else would go silent. And there'd be this uncomfortable pause until they changed the subject and started again. So they would say, what should we do about this competitor? And she'd say, well, this is what we used to do at my old company, so this is what I think, and they'd be like, quiet. Total momentum killer until they change the subject. Why do you do that? What's going on there? And they said, because every time we disagree with her or have a different opinion, she never acknowledges that we might be right. She always insists that she's correct and defends herself. And we finally just decided, why bother? Why bother? So we thought that was interesting. A couple weeks later, we went and did a 2-day off-site meeting with that executive team. So we went off-site, and during the first day of that meeting, we talked about trust and vulnerability, but we also talked about strategy and tactics in the company and what they were doing in their business. And then that night, we went to dinner at an Italian restaurant where we had some wine with dinner, which of course is the great elixir of truth for most executive teams. Many of you found that out last night, probably. And so, after dinner, this woman had a few too many glasses of wine, and she stood up, and I couldn't write this, I promise. She stood up, raised her glass and said, she had a few too many glasses, said, okay, we've been talking about trust today, and I just wanted to let you know I've been married for 10 years to my husband now, and I barely learned to trust him this year. And so I'm probably not going to be trusting you guys anytime soon, if ever. Cheers. And we were like, cheers, all right. So the CEO and she and I went outside and talked about this, and we said, okay, here's the problem that this woman has. She has a fundamental trust issue. And it probably dates back to her childhood. I mean, it seemed pretty serious. And as much as we wanted to go get, a local priest or minister and Dr. Phil, I don't know if you know who Dr. Phil is, and this woman's mama in for counseling, we realized we couldn't afford to do that. We had to make this team work, but we also didn't want to just fire her. We said, we got to work with her and get her to open up to the team. So after a number of months, I worked with her and the CEO worked with her, and it became very clear she was not going to change. Her trust issues were that deep. She couldn't be vulnerable. So the CEO finally managed her off the team and out of the company. And do you know the very next meeting that we had without her there, the dynamics had changed so much that you would have thought they had swapped out every member of that executive team for a new one. Because if just one member of a team, and that's the moral of this story, if just one member of a team cannot be vulnerable, it's going to spread like a disease to the entire team. One member. Now, everybody's going to come at that differently. Oh, you're right? Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay. If one member of a team cannot be vulnerable, it's going to spread like a disease to the entire team. So how do we get our teammates to be vulnerable? And some people are going to come at it in different ways, different personalities, different histories. But we got to know that everybody's willing to be vulnerable and acknowledge their weaknesses. So how do we do that? Well, the only way to do it is if the leader goes first. If the leader is the first one